everybody, how are you doing? Hope you're doing well. The title of this video is Men of the Bible series, and the case study is David. Okay, David, who was the youngest son of Jesse, began his career as an aide at the court of Saul, Israel's first king. God had sent the prophet Samuel to Bethlehem and guided him to David, a humble servant, shepherd, and a talented musician. He brought the young man to Saul's court, where his harp was so soothing that Saul called for David whenever he was vexed by an evil spirit sent by God. 1 Samuel chapter 9 verse 16. About this time tomorrow, I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him, rule over my people Israel. He will deliver them from the hands of the Philistines. I have looked on my people, for their cry has reached me. A major Philistine battle loomed Goliath. 1 Samuel chapter 17 verse 5 to 7. Goliath, a champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of silver of scale armor of bronze, weighing 5,000 shekels, and on his legs he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield bearer went ahead of him. Armed with only a sling, he picked a stone from a riverbed and slung it at Goliath's head. So David was victorious in that he had faith in God, and he trusted that God would deliver him from Goliath's hand, and Goliath cast David by his gods, and David told him that you will be delivered by the Lord's power. And so Goliath was defeated when, after David slung the sling, and the stone flew into Goliath's head, and the stone hit Goliath's head. After that, Goliath collapsed and was defeated. Yes, and he distinguished himself as a warrior against the Philistine, that his resultant popularity aroused Saul's jealousy and a plot to kill him. Yes, the Israelites were jubilant. Saul was compelled to place young David at the head of his army. 1 Samuel chapter 18 verse 5. When whatever mission Saul sent him on, David was so successful that Saul gave him the high rank in the army. This pleased all the troops and Saul's officers as well. Yes. David fled into southern Judah and Philistia on the coastal plain of Palestine, where with great saga, city and foresight began to lay the foundation of his career. That was after Saul was determined to kill David, and after Saul saw how popular David was, and Israel went to war with the Philistines at Mount Gilboa, and Saul and his sons rushed to meet them. But God turned against Saul. God was not with Saul. That was after Saul disobeyed the order that God gave him, that was to kill all the Amalekites. But instead, Saul spared King Agag and the best wildlife. He did that because he pleased the people. He did not please the Lord. And Samuel was also disappointed when he saw the animals making noise, the sheep bleating, and he was also impatient when Saul did the sacrifice instead of Samuel doing the sacrifice after Samuel delayed. And so this displeased the Lord. And Samuel told Saul that the Lord had taken the kingdom away from him and had given it to another. So that means after that conversation between Samuel and Saul, the Lord left Saul, and Saul was tormented by the evil spirits. And Saul was so desperate. He was so desperate. He was praying, but God never answered him. And this resulted to Saul consulting the medium. And it was after Samuel died, the spirit of Samuel came and told Saul that, why are you disturbing me? Because you have done this, the kingdom, the Lord has turned against you. And so after that, Saul died. Saul was injured in that battle, and his sons were also were killed, including Jonathan. And badly wounded, Saul fell into his own sword. 1 Samuel chapter 31 verse 1 to 7. Now the Philistines fought against Israel. The Israelites fled before them, and many fell dead at Mount Gilboa. The Philistines were in hot pursuit of Saul and his sons, and they killed his sons Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua. The fighting grew fierce around Saul, and when the archers overtook him, they wounded him critically. Saul said to his armor bearer, "Draw your sword and run me through, or these uncircumcised fellows will come and run me through and abuse me." But his armor bearer was terrified and would not do it. So Saul took his own sword and fell on it. When the armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he too fell into on his sword and died with him. So Saul and his 3 sons and his armor bearer and all his men died together that same day. When the Israelites along the valley and those across the Jordan saw that the Israelite army had fled and that Saul and his sons had died, they abandoned their towns and fled, and the Philistines came and occupied them. So Saul's surviving son Ishbal was anointed as his successor, supported by the northern tribes, but the southern elders went to Hebron, David's military base, and anointed David as king. 2 Samuel chapter 5 verse 6. the king and his men marched to Jerusalem to attack the Jebusites who lived there. The Jebusites said to David, "You will not get in here. Even the blind and the lame can ward you off." They thought David cannot get in here. 2 Samuel chapter 7 verse 2. He said to Nathan the prophet, "Here I am living in a house of cedar, while the ark of God remains in a tent." Verse 11 to 13. "And I've done ever since the time I appointed leaders over my people Israel, and I will also give you rest from all your enemies. The Lord declares to you that the Lord himself will establish a house for you. When your days are over and you rest with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you, your own flesh and blood, and I will establish his kingdom. He is the one who will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever." David compromised his reputation by pursuing the beautiful Bathsheba, who was Uriah's wife, and placed Uriah in the front ranks against the Ammonites, where he was killed. After Bathsheba mourned, David married her, and she bore him his son. But the prophet rebuked David for his evil scheme, and the baby died. So the prophet Nathan confronted David, told David that he had sinned against God by having Uriah killed and taking his wife to be your own. And he gave David a story of the rich man and the poor man with their sheep. And through that story, Prophet Nathan said that David did an evil act and he was to be punished. But then David repented before God and was promised that Bathsheba would bear him a second son, that is Solomon. 2 Samuel chapter 11 verse 27. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. So Bathsheba extracted David's promise that their son Solomon would succeed him, and it came to pass. Hope you've learned something from this series, Men of the Bible series, that is David. If you've been blessed, comment down below and have a good day.